All right, let's button this up in our final portion here. This is going to be sections 97 and 94, so we'll light right into it. The first thing that we actually get is a letter from John Whitmer. This is found in Letter Book 2, and it's the handwriting of James Mulholland. It's written mostly to Oliver Cowdery, but it's also kind of addressed to Joseph Smith, so we put it in the Joseph Smith papers. The historical introduction to this says, in this 29 July 1833 letter, John Whitmer and William W. Phelps provided details about events unfolding in Jackson County, Missouri, to church leaders in Kirtland, Ohio. In the July 1833 issue of the Evening and Morning Star, William W. Phelps published an editorial titled Free People of Color, which warned free black members of the Church of Christ about the Missouri state laws that prohibited free blacks from coming to or settling in the state, quote, under any pretext whatever, unquote. So this is antebellum South. This is pre-world or pre-Civil War time. So talking about, kind of letting freed slaves know what the situation was not taken very well. So moving on to this. By July 1833, non-Mormon residents of Jackson County circulated a document enumerating their grievances against members of the Church of Christ and stating their determination to eliminate them from the county by purchasing their properties or by, quote, such means as may be sufficient to remove them. Signed by some 300 residents of Jackson County, the document, known later among members of the church as the Manifesto, also called for a meeting to be held on the 20th of July to further discuss the perceived problems with the Mormons and how to remove the church members from the county. At the meeting, the assembled Missourians adopted resolutions listing specific actions to be taken against the Mormons and appointed a committee to present their agreed-upon demands to a group of church leaders. The committee presented their ultimatum that same day and gave church leaders only 15 minutes to reply. The Mormons refused to comply, after which the committee returned to the courthouse, where those who had gathered voted to demolish the Mormons' print shop. After destroying the shop, they tarred and feathered Bishop Edward Partridge and Charles Allen and gave notice that they would return on the 23rd of July. So this is the destruction of the press that ruined the publication of the Book of Commandments. And they went back, and like I said, they tarred and feathered. They kind of beat up the main leaders that they could, tarred and feathered them. And this in response to this idea that they were going to take over the land, that they were going to allow freed slaves to show up, all this kind of stuff was the match that struck this little tinderbox. So we get further into the historical introduction. Partridge and other church leaders reported that on the 23rd of July, the mob again assembled to the number of about 500 and proceeded to take some of the leading elders by force, declaring it to be their intention to whip them from 50 to 500 lashes apiece. John Corll, John Whitmer, William W. Phelps, Sidney Gilbert, Edward Partridge, and Isaac Morley, quote, offered themselves as a ransom to the mob for the church, willing to be scourged or die if that will appease their anger towards the church. But the mob declared that all church members must leave or die. The confrontation on the 23rd of July led to the creation of another document known as the Memorandum of the Agreement. In the agreement, Mormon leaders pledged that most of the leaders of the church and half of the members would leave the county by the 1st of January, 1834, and the remainder would leave by the 1st of April, 1834. So I know we've talked about Sidney Gilbert in the past. I just want to point him out as he's had some conflicts. But they actually presented them to say, if you need to whip us or kill us, then do it. Just let these people live. Was a very, quite a change from the conflicts they've had in the past. So a very interesting story there. Further into the historical introduction, we get the letter featured here, which includes copies of the Manifesto and of the Mormons' agreement to leave the county, indicates that the church leaders in Missouri had received Cowdery's letter and was written in response to his request. On the 29th July letter, John Whitmer, the principal author, provided an update on recent developments in Jackson County, while William W. Phelps added a note on both the anxiety and faithfulness of the Missouri church members. And if you're wondering how this splashed out, if you're not familiar with church history, the mob got away with it. Everything that they did, they got away with it. I mean, just to put it very simply. So footnote 21 from this letter says this: members of the Church of Christ received almost no compensation for their lost property and the abuse they suffered, despite the considerable time and money spent attempting to seek redress through the legal system. In 1839, for example, Edward Partridge wrote, quote, "I have never received any satisfaction for being tarred and feathered by the mob on the 20th of July. Quote, although I commenced a suit against some of them for $50,000 damage and paid my lawyer $600 to carry it on. As bishop in charge of administering inheritance to church members, Partridge also held title to 2,136 acres of land in the county, along with 2 lots in Independence, but he received no compensation for the loss of his property." So the mob, they succeeded. They got 2,136 acres of land. They beat the crap out of some people, destroyed a printing press, burned some buildings down, and I guess everybody was okay with it. And that, I have to say this, I mean, take your pick on who you're talking to here, because this kind of thing has happened to a lot of different groups throughout American history, and this is kind of the ugly side of the frontier. And you'll see this. I think most Western movies are actually made about this. This happened to a lot of different people, and Latter-day Saints were no exception. So pretty nasty stuff. There is a very targeted manifesto. So this thing that we're talking about, this manifesto, we do have a portion of it. It says here, according to a petition that church leaders sent to Missouri Governor Daniel Dunklin, about 400 to 500 people met at the courthouse in Independence on the 20th of July to draft the following resolutions. So just, this is writing to the governor saying, this is what we're going to do. This is in the United States. Okay. Number 1, that no Mormon shall in future move and settle in this county. 2, that those now here who shall give a definitive pledge of their intention within a reasonable time to remove out of the county shall be allowed to remain unmolested until they have sufficient time to sell their property and close their businesses without any material sacrifice. 3, that the editor of the Star be required forthwith to close his office and discontinue the business of printing in this county. And as to all other stores and shops belonging to the sect, their owners must in every case strictly comply with the terms of the second article of this declaration, and upon failure, prompt and efficient measures will be taken to close the same. 4, that the Mormon leaders here are required to use their influence in preventing any further immigration of their distant brethren to this county, and to counsel and advise their brethren here to comply with the above requisitions. 5, that those who fail to comply with these requisitions must be referred to those of their brethren who have gifts of divination and of unknown tongues to inform them of the lot that awaits them. This group then resolved to destroy Mormon's printing establishment, which they did, and they also engaged in other forms of mob violence. So let's go through it. Let's talk about the First Amendment here. No Mormon shall move into this part of the county. So there's your freedom of religion. Those that are now here have to intend on leaving. So, freedom of property is there. Editor of the Star has to close his office. That's the freedom of the press. Mormon leaders are required to prevent further immigration. So that's crossing state laws. They can't have businesses. So that violates the Commerce Clause. They just about do about everything to violate the Constitution in about alphabetical order here. And what they did was very wrong. And like I said, as upset as you may or may not be, perhaps maybe you're out there thinking, Latter-day Saints and Mormons deserve all of it. I think it's wrong no matter who you are. And I know this has happened to many different people for many, many centuries and decades, and probably is happening even to this day. And this is a very disgusting practice. So, but things changed. The Civil War happened, and a lot of this kind of stuff altered. Another thing I wanted to mention here, before we get too harsh, because this kind of stuff is upsetting, but not to get too harsh about these people, because at the time, states had a lot more power over themselves. And the idea, in some cases, some legal historians will tell you that, states could do this, just the federal government couldn't. And if you read the Constitution, so Congress shall make no law against the establishment of religion, but perhaps a state can, or a governor can. Yeah, one interpretation of it. Anyway, so there you go. That's the letter leading up to everything else. And I have done that because the letter is very long. I'm not going to read it. And it also kind of sets the stage for the next couple of sections that we have and the next couple of episodes that we have in filling in the history. So let's start into section 97. So the earliest copy that we get here is from Revelation Book 2 in the handwriting of Frederick G. Williams again. He's kind of taking the front seat here again. There's some interesting ink used for some printing marks and corrections made here, which I thought was interesting. We also get a copy in Revelation Book 1, which is the handwriting of John Whitner, with very few corrections, but they're all in John Whitner's hand. It is called Section 81 in the 1835 Doctrine and Covenants, and it is also found in the manuscript history of the church. The earliest sort of introduction to this is simply Kirtland, 2nd of August, 1833. So we're just a few days after this mob violence happened. So this is over in Kirtland, too, so it's not like they know what's going on. It says, 2nd of August, 1833, the word of the Lord unto Joseph, Sidney, and Frederick. That's all you get. Same thing for Revelation Book 1. Doctrine and Covenants actually gives us less. It just says Revelation given, August 1833, and that's all you get there. And the manuscript history briefly talks about the previous letter that we just read. And then it says, on the 2nd instant, the same day of the publication of the mob in the Monitor, I received the following revelation given August 1833. Don't know what that means. Anyway, some writing errors there. There are no differences in the modern section headings. So from the historical introduction, we get this. For section 97, it says, the 2nd of August revelation featured here further warned that if the members of the church did not observe divine commandments, they would suffer, quote, sore afflictions with pestilence, with plague, with sword, with vengeance, with devouring fire, unquote. But if Zion sinned no more, none of these things shall come upon her. Now, further into this, unbeknownst to Joseph Smith at the time he dictated this revelation, church members in Jackson County were already suffering sore afflictions. Other county residents demanded that Mormons leave their homes, destroy the church's printing establishment, and tarred and feathered Bishop Edward Partridge and Charles Allen. The 2nd of August revelation instructed church members to chastise the wicked among them and to repent completely to avoid further violence and suffering. So there's the introduction. And hopefully all of this has been filled in. A lot going on here, obviously. So some of the content and footnotes of this. We have a school of the prophets in Zion. So we get this from the introduction. Or from the text, from the actual revelation that says, I, the Lord, am well pleased that there should be a school in Zion, and also with my servant Parley. For he abideth in me, and inasmuch as he continue to abide in me, he shall continue to preside over the school in the land of Zion, and I will bless him with a multiplicity of blessings, in expounding all scriptures and mysteries to the edification of the school and of the church in Zion, unquote. Footnote 6 to this says, no official records exist concerning the organization of the School of the Prophets in Missouri, or of Parley P. Pratt's call to be the teacher. A June 1833 letter from the First Presidency, however, contains a possible reference to the school and to Pratt's appointment. Quote, we commend the plan highly of you choosing a teacher to instruct the high priest that they may be able to silence gainsayers, unquote. Pratt wrote in his autobiography that he was called to preside over a school of elders in the summer of 1833. It is uncertain if these two references are about the same school. Nevertheless, a school was organized in Missouri, and Pratt further explained that approximately 60 men attended the school once a week in the open air under some tall trees, in a retired place in the wilderness where we prayed, preached, and prophesied, and exercised ourselves in the gifts of the Holy Spirit. It's from the historical introduction. We get a very interesting definition of tithing that I thought would be worth noting. From the text, we get, verily I say unto you that it is my will that an house should be built unto me in the land of Zion, like unto the pattern which I have given you. Yea, let it be built speedily by the tithing of my people. Behold, this is the tithing and the sacrifice which I, the Lord, require at the hand of their hands, that there may be a house built unto me for the salvation of Zion. Footnote 15 for this says, tithing, as used here, suggests performing a sacrificial duty to do the works that God asked of faithful church members. rather than the giving of a tenth of one's annual increase. As church members later understood the practice of giving a tenth of one's increase as a form of tithing began in late November of 1834, over a year later, and the annual contribution of 1/10 of all their interest became a church mandate in a revelation dictated on the 8th of July, 1838. So, like 5 years later. So, this tithing that we talk about and was used a lot, like when they built Kirtland, when they built Nauvoo, when they built Salt Lake, they were tithing their time. And I would say we still hold this today. Like if you serve a mission, like if you're a young man, young woman serves a mission, you're tithing your time to the Lord. You're tithing a portion of your life to the work of the ministry. So there you have it. A very powerful scripture in here says, "Inasmuch as my people build an house unto me in the name of the Lord, and do not suffer any unclean thing to come into it, that it be not defiled, my glory shall rest upon it, yea, in my presence shall be. Therefore I will come into it, and all the pure in heart that shall come into it shall see God." So footnote 17 for this says, Joseph Smith sent a copy of the Olive Leaf Revelation to Missouri and explained that it commanded us in Kirtland to build a house of God and establish a school for the prophets. This is the word of the Lord to us, and we must, yea, the Lord helping us, we will obey. As on conditions of our obedience, he has promised us great things, yea, even a visit from the heavens to honor us with his own presence. And like I said, when we get to section 110, we're going to get a bit of an insight as to what that came to be. So a very interesting one. And I know this is maybe a criticism of the modern church of like, are you really saying that if we go into the whatever Mount Timpanogos or Manhattan, New York temple that we're going to see God? And according to this revelation, that's kind of what it's implying. That's what it's saying. All right. We get a couple of very timely promises here from the text. "Therefore let Zion rejoice, while all the wicked shall mourn. For behold, and lo, vengeance cometh speedily upon the ungodly as the whirlwind. And who shall escape it? The Lord's scourge shall pass over by night and by day, and the report thereof shall vex all people. Yet it shall not be stayed until the Lord come, for the indignation of the Lord is kindled against their abominations and all their wicked works. Nevertheless, Zion shall escape, if she observe to do all things whatsoever I have commanded her." And the final words from this says, "Let it be read this once in their ears, that I, the Lord, have accepted of their offering. But if she sin no more, none of these things shall come upon her, and I will bless her with blessings, and multiply a multiplicity of blessings upon her and upon her generation forever and ever, saith the Lord your God. Amen." That's the end of that. So that's section 97. Now we get into section 94. The introduction for this, we get the earliest copy is Revelation Book 2. So Frederick G. Williams is writing this one, very clean copy. We get an addition from him at the very end of it, which we don't have in any published revelations, which says this: "These two houses are not to be built until I give you a commandment concerning them." That's it. Now, I'm going to skip ahead into the actual footnotes portion of this. Footnote 16, later in this text, says this: "At a later date, Frederick G. Williams inserted the following at the end of this revelation." Just read it. "The copy in the 6th of August, 1833 letter does not include this sentence. The inclusion of this sentence may have reflected the need to avoid diverting scarce resources away from the construction of the Kirtland Temple until it was complete. The presidency made this prioritization clear in their comments about the revelation in the 6th of August 1833 letter. The two last mentioned houses are to be built as soon as the other, as means can be obtained so to do." So that's the only place you see it. We get another copy in a letter to church leaders, which was sent in a packet in August. Frederick G. Williams wrote this one, and it has the signatures of Sidney Rigdon, Joseph Smith, and Frederick G. Williams on it. We get a copy in Revelation Book 1, and it kind of suggests that it could have been merged into 97. It shows up at the end with no intro, and it's one of these, a blah, 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 amen, and then again, verily I say unto you, etc. That sort of situation is what we get. So I'm of the opinion that it could have very easily been merged together with section 97. And it's the handwriting of John Whitmer. It is section 83 in the original Doctrine and Covenants, and a copy, as always, is in the manuscript history of the church. Those are the contemporary versions. So let's get into some introductions here. Revelation Book 2 simply says Kirtland, 2nd of August, 1833. Revelation Book 1 has no intro. And the big letter has also no introduction. So it's just kind of there. The Doctrine and Covenants says Revelation given the same date. And this is where the problem is. Why is 94 way before everything else? Well, here's why. The previous section to this is section 93, which it says was given 3 months earlier in May, which we now know is incorrect. And that's what you actually get out of the 1981 section heading. So the manuscript history gives the same heading as 1835 Doctrine and Covenants. So skipping ahead, in the 1981 version of the Doctrine and Covenants, it says that this was given on May 6th. The 2013 one says May 2nd, or August 2nd, I'm sorry. It was given on August 2nd. So there was a clerical error here, which we'll get into, where they just kind of wrote down the wrong date. And it stayed from that day, from 1835 to 2013. That's a long time. So check your work before you publish something. Historical introduction for this says, 4 days after Joseph Smith dictated this revelation, the presidency copied it, along with 2 other recent revelations, into a letter they sent to Missouri. The revelation, the presidency stated, quote, is also binding on you, that is, you at Zion have to build 2 houses, as well as the one which we have sent the pattern, unquote. In other words, they instructed that following the construction of the House of the Lord in Independence, the Missouri church members should build an administrative house for church business and one for their printing establishment, quote, as soon as means can be obtained to do so. These plans, however, were disrupted by events that had already begun to unfold in Jackson County in late July 1833. Unbeknownst to the presidency in Kirtland, opponents to the church had raised the church's independence printing office, threatened local leaders, and forced them to sign an agreement that they and their fellow religionists would leave Jackson County. Amid escalating tension, violent encounters drove the Mormons from the county in November of 1833. And that was kind of the last time we were there. Further into this, meanwhile, in the fall of 1833, members of the church in Kirtland were having their own difficulties fulfilling the commandment to build the house of the Lord. And construction of Kirtland temporarily halted because of lack of building materials and the new priority to provide relief to church members in Jackson County. Completing the Kirtland House of the Lord consumed most of the church's available resources for the next few years. After printing operations moved to Kirtland, they were first housed at the John Johnson Inn and later at the schoolhouse. The 2 structures meant for the presidency and for the printing were never built in either Kirtland or Jackson County. And then we're going to get into, like, why were these dated wrong? This is the editors of the Joseph Smith papers being very nice. It says, however, when preparing the 1835 volume for printing, the compositor apparently mistakenly inserted the 6th of May 1833 revelation between the first 2 2nd of August revelation and the one featured here. So section 97 and 94. Thus, in the 1835 edition of the Doctrine and Covenants, the phrase given the same date in the Revelation heading seems to refer to the 6th of May rather than August 2nd. The 1844 edition of the Doctrine and Covenants maintained the same heading as the 1835 edition. For the 1876 edition, the new heading was written that explicitly dates this revelation to the May 6th. This error was perpetuated in all subsequent editions of the Doctrine and Covenants until the 2013 edition published by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a long time. All right, so some content and footnotes from this we get. And I'll just say this too. I'm going to skip a ton of footnotes because I've already described in detail a lot of what they're referring to here. So just so that you know, a lot of stuff is skipped from the Joseph Smith papers because it's referring back to things we've already discussed in this episode. But the text does give us this. Let the first lot on the south be consecrated unto me for the building of an house for the presidency, for the work of the presidency, in obtaining revelations, and for the work of the ministry of the presidency, in all things pertaining to the church and kingdom. Verily I say unto you, that it shall be built 55 by 65 in the width thereof, and in the length thereof, in the inner court, and there shall be a lower court and an higher court, according to the pattern which shall be given unto you hereafter. And it shall be dedicated unto the Lord from the foundation thereof, according to the order of the priesthood. A couple of footnotes here. Number 6 says, these dimensions are the same as those given for the Kirtland Temple in a Revelation 2 months earlier, which we've already discussed. However, in footnote 7, we also get this. This building was never built, and there is no record that a detailed architectural pattern was ever created. So this revelation just frankly never happened. Footnote 8 also says this. Since this building was never constructed, there is no record of the order of the priesthood that was to be followed in dedicating it. So that whole phrase, we don't know what it means. Like, after the order of the priesthood, we don't know what it means. The text also gives us, verily I say unto you, the second lot on the south shall be dedicated unto me for the building of an house, unto me for the work of the printing of the translation of my scriptures, and all things whatsoever I shall command you. Footnote 11 for this says, on the 2nd of July, 1833, Sidney Rigdon wrote that he and Joseph Smith had finished the translation of the Bible a few hours since. The previous week, as the translation neared completion, they informed church leaders in Missouri that the printing of the new translation cannot be done until we attend to it ourselves, and this we will do as soon as the Lord permit. A month later, that permission was given to the revelation featured here. The presidency reported to the leaders in Missouri, quote, you will see by these revelations that we have to print the new translation here at Kirtland, for which we will prepare as soon as possible, unquote. Because they viewed the directives of this 2nd of August revelation to be equally applicable to church members in Jackson County, the presidency added, quote, you are to print an edition of the scriptures. There at the same time we do here, so that 2 editions will be struck at the same time, the one here and the other there, unquote. However, subsequent events in Jackson County and Kirtland interfered with this plan. So we are supposed to be getting the Book of Commandments out of this printing press, as well as an edition of what we now call the inspired version of the Bible. It was razed to the ground. It never happened. And it never happened. So there you go. Wow. A lot of stuff. I'm supposed to be talking about like the Kirtland temple plans, houses of the Lord, a plat for a whole city, Zion and how it is, persecutions, Doctrine and Covenants sections. That was a ton. So I hope you appreciated that. I hope I didn't lose you too far in there. There's a lot of data in there. But yeah, I'm glad you're sticking with us. Any comments? I really appreciate it. And this is the amateur historian once again signing off and saying, check your work before you print it. Check yourself before you wreck yourself, I guess. Have a good week.